Hello and welcome back to Mrs. Torres' YouTube channel. Today we are going to be looking at some examples for the IXLs that you're going to be working on today. So that's going to be about parallelograms and then the special cases of parallelograms that we already talked about. So square, rectangle, and rhombus, not triangles. All right, so let's look at the first one. It says find S in the parallelogram EFGH. So I'm telling you that this is a parallelogram. Now, of course, I drew this at home without a ruler, so it does not look like a parallelogram, but when you do it on IXL, it will definitely look more like a parallelogram. All right, so we know some of the side lengths here, so we've got to look at our notes because we're using our resources, and we've got to look at the properties of a parallelogram. All right, let's flip to that page. Here we go. Parallelograms. What do we know about sides? Well, we know opposite sides are parallel. Is that going to help us since we know the lengths? Not so much. We also know that opposite sides are congruent. Okay, that one might help us. Let's take a look. Well, opposite, remember that means across from each other, right? So that means FE is going to be congruent to GH. And check that out. We know both those lengths. So we can say that S plus 8, that's FE, is equal to 2S because opposite sides are congruent. And then we just solve for S. So subtract S from both sides. We get S equals 8. Boom. You're done. Now, be very careful what it asks for. Sometimes instead of saying find S, sometimes we'll say find EH. So if it said find EH, we would still have to find S, and then we just have to take this S and plug it in there. So it would be 8 plus 17, which is 25. When it has three sides like this on a parallelogram, this third side that doesn't have anything opposite of it is just there to throw you off, or it might be there for this purpose. All right, next one. So if HK is equal to V, so let's label that a while, and JK is 3V minus 62, so that's JK, so that's here, minus 62. Find V in the parallelogram. So again, I know I have a parallelogram here. So we're going to look back at our notes. We're dealing with the diagonals here. What do we know about the diagonals in a parallelogram? They bisect each other. And we've got to know that means it splits it in half, right? So that means JK is going to be equal to KH. That's being bisected. So we can say 3V minus 62 equals V. And then we're going to subtract 3V from both sides. So we'll have negative 62 equals negative 2V. Divide both sides by negative 2. Remember, you got to divide by that negative. So those cancel. I'm left with V equals, and then in your calculator, you can just do negative 62 divided by negative 2, and you'll get positive 31. There we go. All right, next one. In these IXLs, you'll also see some yes or no questions. So here we're asking, is this parallelogram HIJK, is it a rhombus? So let's flip in our notes to our rhombus. Oops, our rhombus properties here. So in a rhombus, in this shape, I should say, we're being told that KI is splitting these angles in half, right? So this angle here is congruent to this angle, and this angle here is congruent to this angle. Well, in a rhombus, diagonals bisect the angles. So that means we would click the little button that says, yes, this is a rhombus because our angles are being bisected or split in half. All right, again, we've got a rhombus here, and this time we're looking to find the measure of angle WVZ. So first, we've got to find that angle, WVZ. Z. So remember, the middle letter is where the actual angle is. So this angle here is the angle measure that we're looking for. So we got to look back at our rhombus properties again. Well, the one that we used last time was that diagonals bisect the angles. We can use that again here. So if this angle here is 57, so is that, okay. Now, when we draw in the diagonals here, we've created a triangle here, right? So we're looking for this angle measure in our triangle, and we know one, so if we can figure out what the third one is, that'll help us figure out WVZ, which is what we want. Let me redraw WVZ over here. Sometimes it's hard to see when it's in the rhombus like that. So we know this is 57 degrees, and this is what we're looking for. So this angle up here is created when the two diagonals intersect. Well, is there anything special that happens when diagonals intersect in a rhombus? Diagonals are perpendicular. Remember, that means we formed a 90-degree angle. So that means this angle here is 90 degrees. Well, now we know two angles in a triangle. We can absolutely find the third, right? If we just take 180 minus 90 minus 57, oops, that's going to give us the other angle. So that will be, if you type in your calculator, 33 degrees. So this angle here is 33 degrees. All right, last example here. We've got a rectangle this time, and we know that xz, so this is here, is w plus 42, and yz is 3w, so that's up here. All right, so we're talking about the diagonals of a rectangle. Now, we know that this is a parallelogram, right? Rectangles are parallelograms. So that means that our diagonals are being bisected, so they're being split in half. But let's see what else we know about the diagonals of a rectangle. Diagonals are congruent and they bisect each other. So that's just because it's a parallelogram, right? But in a rectangle, it's special that those are congruent. That means Vx and Wy are congruent. So they're congruent and they're being split in half, which means, let's just pretend like I redrew them down here. This is Vx and this is Wy. So they're being split in half. There's our midpoint, right? So if Vx, let's just call it 10, that means to be split in half. We've got 5 and 5. We know they're congruent, so that means this is also being split up into 5 and 5. So that means all of these segments of the diagonal are congruent. So that means all of these segments here are congruent. Well, if these are congruent, that makes our equation pretty easy. 3w equals w plus 42. Subtract w from both sides. 2w equals 42. And divide both sides by 2 to get 21. So again, just use your notes. These notes are here to help you. You don't have to memorize the properties. You just have to know how to use them. All right, if you have any trouble, please message me. I can't wait to see you guys when I get back.